Okay, we're back. Thank you for everyone that tuned in to yesterday's interview, and especially thank you to Caroline Strecker. That was a really fun interview. I think I did 75% of the talking, which I'm prone to do at times, especially if I'm a little anxious. Um, Caroline is she proves that there's hope in America. I think millennials kind of we were there for the worst of the worst in terms of mass media feeding us what is now considered to be slop. They call it goy slop. And and whether or not it comes from mostly Jewish run media, I don't know. And I don't care. It is what it is. Uh, but it's a very well delineated line. There's these moments in time where you look around at the media, you look around at what is being handed over to especially the youth, what's being fed to Americans. And if you see it that way, if you don't look at media and you say, well, we have choices. We're a free country. We have so many choices. Maybe we do. But in terms of like what movies are in theaters, and speaking specifically of millennials, that was a big deal for my generation, was going to a theater and seeing the next big film. And I on X recently I mentioned but Judd Apatow films. You know, you get up into the later 2000s, 2010s. These Judd Apatow films were really big, Knocked Up. You know, um, and they seem to have some sort of moral compass, but at the same time, if you really got down to the nitty gritty of what these films were selling you, it was not a Christian view of society. It was not a Christian take on, by any stretch. I've mentioned American Pie in the past. And the American Pie films, they would seem to have some sort of moral lesson at the end, but really there was no morality there. And they were using some crazy idea, something sexual, to sell an entire film. And then the rest of the story is kind of ticky tack together, and they make sure to put a little bit of nudity. And we were just coming out of the 90s where that was, Baywatch was on TV, and now we've kind of swung completely the other way where we live like Puritans. Anything on television that offends women being sexualized is wrong and terrible, and we never seem to find some kind of happy medium, some in between, which is a shame. Because I'm not one for I don't only go see Christian movies. I don't. I don't shun movies if I think they're going to have some naughty things in them. Sometimes that's fun, and there's nothing wrong with it. But what we saw in the 2000s and a lot in the 90s and the 80s was the morality was not just taken out but twisted. Things were twisted. And so for millennials like Caroline that saw that take place in real time, if you were Christian, you kind of knew it wasn't something you should be watching or paying attention to or lending credence to. But it was out there. and it was constant. And like I said, you had choice, but you really didn't have. It's not like today where you can get on the Angel app, or if you're Catholic, Formed, or some of these other Christian media apps. You can't choose that quickly and easily. I mean, I think our generation had Veggie Tales, and every now and again a Christian film would somehow cut through and make it to mainstream. But it was they were few and far between. For the most part, you had murder, sex, uh, just scandal in popular media. And why is that important? Well, we get back to what we've been talking about. Any of you that have been joining me for Behold a Pale Horse, I've been reading, and I don't even hardly know about the rest of the book. I've read a little bit of the rest of the book. It gets into secret societies, which, I don't really fear secret societies too much, but I don't like it when I find out that elected officials are in secret societies. Not a fan of that. But millennials like Caroline, like myself, we saw this this push toward godlessness in media. And like I said, for my generation, you would go to the theater and you'd have 10 movies maybe to choose from, 12 tops. And it for a long time it felt like it didn't matter which one you chose, you were going to get stuff in there that probably we would say not safe for children. And now we look around at the bad media has gotten that much worse. Or people have given up on any kind of storylines and they watch what is now called, or I guess you could call it slop on things like TikTok, on YouTube, these short films. Now the content isn't exactly the same. I mean, some people watch that stuff, OnlyFans, pornography, Pornhub, whatever. But now we see attention spans getting even shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. Even though there are more choices, they find ways to hit these dopamine receptors in the brain and get you hooked. All the while, we see our parents, the boomers, are hooked on the 24-hour news cycle, which again is, one dopamine hit after another, a lot of hitting the fight or flight part of the brain. I mean, we've had what, 25 years now of Fox News alerts? That wasn't a thing. And the younger generation, they don't get that. They don't get that these Fox News alerts, bright colors, that was a product of 9/11. And if you understand, I mean, read Clockwork Orange. Read Clockwork Orange. I've never read it, but I get the gist. I've never even seen the entire movie. It looks too dark for me. The book sounds too dark for me. I'm kind of a wimp when it comes to media, but maybe staying away from that kind of stuff has been good for me. But that amygdala hitting, that hitting the brain like that, wearing your senses down, making it's all like pornography. You start out, all you got to see. When I was a kid, there would be the Sears catalog, the bra section would it's so embarrassing, but it's true. It didn't take much. It's part of the reason a lot of these really religious people, they, no collarbone, please. And I would, please hide those knees because you get me riled up. And now we have women walking around damn near topless in public, which was a joke on Seinfeld in the 90s. The woman that decided to just wear her bra. But I don't know, maybe it was predictive programming. They feed it to you, it gets it planted in the brain, and it sits there. Doesn't go anywhere. Once it's there, it's there. And now we see women actually walking around in their bras constantly. But it's comfortable. It's comfortable. And we're a free people, right? No, it gets dangerous when you embrace it. When you embrace the slop, it gets dangerous. It's not good. So yeah, millennials, people like Caroline Strecker, they've seen the other side and they see what's coming. Although there are alternative media outlets giving us good stuff again, unless the mainstream, unless the big films coming out start speaking to our hearts again and not to our groins, we're just going to keep heading in a bad direction, in my personal opinion. I did not think out this monologue well. I don't ever think out much of anything well, which is, as you can see. But Caroline's part of this Ron Paul generation, these millennials that noticed early on that things were heading in a bad direction. And for us, a lot of times it would be something you'd hear at school, some joke that would take off at school. And we got to a point where there was no more, things weren't even making sense. Things that people found funny. It did make sense to us anymore. You know, why is that funny? And if you were naive enough, you never even got the joke. You didn't get it. And your parents wouldn't let you see that media, so you never got a chance to get what the joke was. And so that media would bleed out into the public schools, and there was, I don't know, just kind of an anarchy to the appreciation of popular media. And I mean, I love the Ace Ventura. I love it. Things that are zany and wild and crazy. I've always appreciated it. But what happens when, you know, the Clint Eastwood characters are no longer your heroes? What happens when it's someone that's completely irreverent to the entire system? Not standing up for what's right against a system, but irreverent and doesn't care about what system's in place. You go along with it, you make fun of it, you know, that's where media headed, in that direction. And then you get to the 2010s, or the later 2000s, 2010s, and you get the Judd Apatow stuff, which is the way too cool for school. Parents have a lot of money, and I'm just drifting. Drugs are cool, and they're not even edgy anymore. They're just part of reality. And half my friends are on antidepressants, and but hey, you know, it's all good. Everything's always good in the end. It's all fun and games. Don't worry about it. That kind of mentality. And it's dying, is the good news. It's dying out. I saw Seth Rogen smoking a bong on the stage with like a giant bong. And the comments on every single social media was like, really? He's still doing this. And so it's lost its cool. Judd Apatow films, nobody goes to see him anymore. People finally just woke up. I don't even think his movies got any worse. I think the hype machine got destroyed by streaming. The money wasn't there. That's what happened to Judd Apatow. His movies didn't get any worse. And it's not just Apatow. A lot of these films that were coming out around this time were just so pessimistic. So pessimistic. But it was cool to be pessimistic. It was cool but as long as you were kind, you wouldn't judge anybody ever for anything, as long as you're kind. As long as everybody's kind to one another. And so thank God for people like Caroline Strecker. These people that stand up and say, gosh, I have to do something because I see the apathy now in the young people around me. A lot of us millennials, we were able to get through it, and you move on, and you're appreciative of these positive Christian streaming media outlets. But you do see in greater society where this stuff bled through, and we've got a lot of apathy now. Now, am I blaming it all on media? No, I'm blaming it most on the Federal Reserve and the fact that our money isn't worth anything. But media matters. Media is important, extremely important. And so millennials are going to be the beginning. People like Caroline are going to be the beginning of what's coming. Gen Z, I mean, I didn't know what goy slop was until, the Gen Z crowd came along. I know some people that are Gen Z and started telling me about some things that I'd never heard of, using terms toward specific groups that I didn't know existed. They're pissed. Gen Z's pissed. And their apathy is toward the elite in general. A lot of it toward the Jews, for better or worse. It's the way it is. And it's more than apathy, it's anger. Why do you think people listen to Nick Fuentes? Why do you think clavicular, people care at all? I don't even know. Is he alpha? Is he Z? I have no clue. I don't know where the cutoff is. But Gen X, they seem to understand a lot of what this is looking like. But I think that they kind of got boxed out by the boomers. I mean, do we really still need Mitch McConnell to hold office in Kentucky? Do we still do we really still need Jon Stewart? Now, Jon Stewart is Gen X, but it's boomers, I'm sure, that put him in his spot, and he's a good doggy. He does exactly what they tell him to. That's what you've got a lot of. You've got a lot of the boomers trying, just gripping on as tight as they can to keep this status quo. They did a lot in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s to push this society that, when we look around, is starting to look a lot like Weimar. And it's these generations, these older generations, that have bastardized the United States dollar through excess printing. And that's why this silent weapons for quiet wars is so stinking interesting to people like me, when all of a sudden you look around and you see these, talk about the amygdala, you see these Fox News alerts about one thing after another, and you realize that maybe this isn't God. I mean, maybe it is, but maybe it's not God looking down and smiting us one time after another. Maybe there's people directing what we call our reality in specific directions. People that want us thinking specific ways, people that want us forgetting certain things. Who are they? I don't know. I do not know. I know that corruption seems to be abound, and that if you point it out to people, a lot of them don't even want to hear about it, or give you kind of an attitude of, that's the way it is. That's the way it is. I'm speaking, I'm being very broad today. I'll hone in a second, but I started thinking about, where do people like Caroline come from? Now, granted, her dad, the Strucker Memorandum, which I haven't posted yet, I need to post that on X, is gold. Everybody needs to watch it. I don't know what percentage of what he says is he ended up being exactly right. So I'm not going to tell you, you need to watch this because it is perfectly the truth. And I'm sure he was just trying to get his information out as quickly as humanly possible. But I hope that someday people know Robert Strucker's name, and as well as the names of these other scientists that tried to get the word out that something was awry, that something, at least with the storyline that we were being fed, was wrong. Dr. Peter Dennisberg at UC Berkeley, Dr. John Seal, Dr. Robert Cantwell, and I got all of these from the Strucker Memorandum, and I will post it. But you can also just look it up. You can Google it, look it up on YouTube. And so maybe she had a leg up, and that was part of it. She had a dad that was telling her, "Hey, look, you got to question everything." That's really what it comes down to. Who is willing to question everything? Who's willing to speak truth to power? And it's hard too, because how much of what we talk about is engineered? How much of what we talk about, of our discussions, of our of our culture, how much of our culture is completely drawn up and decided for us before we even make it a part of our culture? She and I on the video talked about, and you can watch it on my X at Dave Cactus Emoji. I'm about to post it to Facebook at Keto Carnivore. So if you want to look us up. We want to discuss right and wrong, not just left and right, but good versus bad, good versus evil. But how easy is it to get caught up in a news story where that takes up how much of your brain power? And then you sit there and go, wait, something kind of like this happened 5 years ago. Why did this time it go viral? How many of us get caught up It's the same thing with life. I was trying to finish a Lego set with my kids and made the mistake of not sticking to every single day working on that thing. Only made it like 3 days in a row, maybe. Set it aside, and there it sits. You know, how many times has that happened with these giant events in our society where we feel like we've got a handle on where the national discourse is, yet we're in the middle of discussing some things, some big story, some event, the rights and the wrongs of it, the good, the bad. And then something else comes along and that gets shelved, and you don't hardly think about it afterward. It's kind of it. And there might be a blurb about what happened that comes out, but for the most part, that's it. And we move on to the next thing. And that's it. That's exactly what the Silent Weapons for Quiet Words paper within Behold a Pale Horse says they have to do in order to keep directing people toward the goals, their goals, so that they can continue to get what they want. Well, who would do such a thing? Who are these people? I don't know. They're members of Bilderberg group, I guess. Oftentimes, they are royalty or elected officials from Europe and the United States that go to these meetings. Other times, they're billionaires. And I don't know that they're always up to no good. A lot of times there's good and bad, but we really got to start thinking about what are we discussing? What are we focusing on? What are we talking about? A lot of people want to say the Jews about everything. And I don't know, maybe it is. Maybe it's just these specific people that are following a specific agenda, but I kind of doubt it. It's not usually how things work. I've talked about rational choice theory on here. Most of the time, you don't want to follow the genome. Oftentimes, you don't even want to follow the religious edict. You want to follow the money. You want to follow the money if you want to get down to the nitty gritty and try to figure out who's doing what. And I think that question, can you feel that question in the back of your mind? Can you feel it in your gut? That question that says, who's making these decisions? Who wants us to head in a very specific direction? Why is it that we had terrible mass immigration, um, illegal immigration under Bush? Why did we have it under Obama? Why did we have, he I think, got better under Trump, but maybe not that much, even though he's focused on it. He's at least brought our attention to it. But they got rid of, what was it called? Alligator Alcatraz. It's gone. We're right back. Hey guys, focus on this. This is important. This is important. Oh, by the way, now you got to focus over here. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Who makes that decision? I think it's in the back of everyone's mind. These are the kinds of decisions that build or destroy empires. You're either you're either getting better or you're getting worse. You're either building or you're falling apart. Who are these people? making these decisions. And why? Thank God for Silicon Valley, because it does feel like now we've got a fighting chance. Caroline and I kind of disagreed yesterday about AI. AI is here. It exists. And the powers that be, they've got, Lord knows what it can tell them. Lord knows what it's capable of. Do you really think that the answer, though, is to scrap it for the common man? There's some funny libertarian memes out there that are like, whenever somebody asks me how libertarian I am, I show them a picture of my garage, and it's got like a F-15 or a tank in the driveway, something like that. Now I understand that you don't, maybe you do want some limitations on how powerful of weaponry the common man can have in today's society, considering that we have lost so much of our sense of civil society, and we fed into this idea that it is every man for himself. It's the golden rule: he who has the gold makes the rules. That's true. Is it optimal under any and all circumstances? That's what we're going with, and we're calling it capitalism. I don't know. But I don't think the answer is to get rid of AI. I think the answer is to demand that we get to see what AI the elite are working with. We need a digital bill of rights that protects our ability to get on really good AI. Would it be expensive? Yeah. But it's the dichotomy there, the juxtaposition of what they're saying they have with things like Mythos versus what we get, Claude Butthole. It's pretty stark. It's a pretty big gap there. And I know that you can pay for better versions of the Claude Butthole. I get it. But I don't think that the answer, unless I start seeing some information and some data that these data centers really are just destroying the environment. Um, I don't know. History kind of repeats itself. And although there are some arguments to be made, hey, maybe the Industrial Revolution wasn't so great after all. I kind of like my air conditioning. I'm a fan. I like getting coffee from wherever the hell it came from. I like having a coffee maker that runs pretty quick. I don't think being a Luddite is the answer, and yet we're going to hear more and more and more that it is from people. So I respectfully disagree with Caroline's take on that, and I don't think she wants to be a Luddite. But you can't just shut AI down, or maybe you can. I don't know. Computers, they knew that AI was going to be something like this. I heard Mark Andreessen talk about a paper that came out, I want to say in the 1910s, that predicted what we're dealing with right now. And think of all the sci-fi that we've seen. How much of our how much of our sci-fi revolves around us having interpersonal relationships with robots? I mean, everything that showed the future shows robots doing things for us. Now, it is interesting that we shot directly to having personal relationships with them, well, and using them for sex. Who would have thought, right? But LLMs are just a product of pushing compute forward, are they not? Maybe they're not. I'm ignorant. I kind of think they are, though. I think it's what we've always wanted. We've always wanted our own Jarvis. We've always wanted our own digital butler, right? Someone to say, yes, sir, I will get this file done up for you and on your desk. But it is strange that we don't quite have that yet. And we're told that we can't imagine what the elite and nation states have access to. So how does it affect us? How does it affect us in either a positive or a negative way? Well, they built these things off of our information of who we are, what we are, using things like our social media. Yeah, did they index every book that's ever existed, or at least existed online? Yes, of course they did. But they've also indexed our lives. If you don't think that AI is watching every single thing you do, learning your every aspect of who you are, think again. And that may not seem like a terrible thing. I mean, we give up how much of our information to companies like Meta already. But what if that AI is working for China or Iran or Israel? What if they need to know your every single weakness? What if AI is like Mythos? What if it's on a level that that I've been told that, oh, we're creating something that we could lose control of, and it is so advanced we don't understand it. It might start telling us information about the universe, and we can't even decipher what the hell it's talking about. Is this is this like is this esoteric knowledge? What's this thing that is so scary about it telling us about ourselves? And if it is that scary, why are they using it? Especially when you have some that Amande. Amande looks like I swear to God, he he looks like Stephen Wright with a bow tie. It's like if Stephen Wright had a clown act. That's Amande. The guy is he's fascinating. He came out of a box. Like that guy was created. Amande was created in a lab to be the villain, but like the goofy villain in a Pixar film. The guy does not look real. It's very interesting. But we gotta fight communism with communism. That's the way to go on Monday. I'm gonna talk about this every single on Monday because it fascinates me. I don't think there's anything more fascinating than somebody saying, "I'm gonna destroy the economy, but don't worry about it because I'm gonna tax myself a lot, and then we'll give it to the poor people." I've been thinking about something called food stamps. I'm going to create that and a safety net, a social safety net, and I'm going to take care of everyone. We've got to fight the CCP. We've got to be able to fight the communists. What they're doing, from what I understand, is taking money from the wealthy and giving it to the poor. They sit there and they say, don't worry about these jobs disappearing because there will be new jobs that pop up, and um, we're gonna give you a set amount, a universal basic income, as Elon has pushed. We're gonna have a universal basic income. Elon has said we're gonna get a high basic income, and that he has mentioned that it will lead to mouse utopia, but it's inevitable. Might as well just go along with the ride. And here's the cool part: is then you can go do whatever you want to do. And if you still want to make a living, you can go find a niche and make a living. But we've got to have the best AI in order to fight China, because over there, the leadership in the CCP has told people that they're going to be taken care of by their government with handouts. And then the government tells them, you know, what they can or can't go do in terms of labor. That's wild. That is truly wild. It's not ironic, it's hypocritical. And it's right in our faces. Right in our faces. The things that Carp says are astounding, and they're right in your face. Now, are these guys right? Are they accurate? Are the futurists, do they have their, the thumb in the wind? Do they know which way the wind's going? Probably. But to feed us, and I've said it many times before, to feed us doom and gloom, and at the exact same time feed us utopia, something's up. It's weird. It's really strange. But again, I don't think you can just shut down AI. I don't understand exactly how that would happen. But what I do understand is that it's not as though now suddenly AI could be used, or now suddenly advanced computing could be used to weaponize society itself against itself. And I know that because of this book and what came out in 1992, which was a transcript of a 1979 paper given to the Bilderbergs that plainly states we're going to build computers that can predict human behavior. And if we can predict it, we can direct it. And they cite computers from the 50s and say, think about where this is headed. One of the things they worry about is population control. What's the best way to control a population? I mean, they talk about benevolent genocide in here. Benevolent genocide. What's the best way to control a population? To them, they say, well, you can do war, but there are better options. Printing excess money, or other forms of genocide. And then we see what Robert Strecker was working on. This idea that maybe, just maybe, AIDS, as well as Lord knows what other viruses, we're a part of some plan to depopulate specific peoples. Go back and read some of Margaret Sanger's letters. The founder of Planned Parenthood. Read what she said about why she wanted to do what she did. There are people that look at specific people and they look down on them. There's a lot of people that do that. But I think when you have a system that is so tailor-made for literal psychopaths to be able to make it to the top, these giant corporations, do you think that you shoot to the top because you're the one with the merit? How many stories have we heard about people sleeping their way to the top? How many stories do we hear about the cutthroat nature of just the social dynamics, and then to be able to do it, to work through a bureaucracy, all the while, staying under the radar from HR. How many times do you get actual psychopaths in charge of these giant corporations? I don't know. But I think it's a question worth asking. How many corporate bigwigs, how many CEOs were more than willing to just make record profits during COVID? People are having their lungs popped by ventilators. I digressed. I do that often. Back to the Strucker Memorandum and silent weapons. In the Strucker Memorandum, they show you how common genetic alterations of RNA tumor viruses grown in human cells. That was a paper from 1966. I've got to stay focused. This is my biggest problem. It really is. My brain, I start talking about something and suddenly something reminds me of something over here. And I want to tell you, I want to say, oh, I remember that. And I do that. And then I allow myself to get way off track. And so thank you for those of you that are paying attention or trying to pay attention, trying to follow me. It's a slog sometimes, but we'll get through it. And I've got this is good stuff. This is real. Will we ever get down to who the bad guy is? Who is the wizard behind the curtain? I don't know. But I think I've found something of a roadmap. And we just got to keep going. And that's what I'm going to try to do for you every day, 5 days a week. So yeah, we know that these viruses can be grown in human tissue. You take a bovine, you take a cattle virus, you take a sheep Visna virus, you throw them in there, and you let them set in the human tissue, the little petri dish, and you wait, and then you can extract all different. They mate. It's like they mate, and then you can extract all different variations, and a lot of them are not going to be able to keep going, but a lot of the blends can't. Not only that, they can then have evolved. They literally mix up with the DNA, and that's what a virus does. That's what these AIDS type viruses do. These retroviruses, these animal retroviruses. And isn't that interesting that most, Strecker points this out, most retroviruses come from animals. At the time that he made the video, the early 90s, he's pointing out that the head of virology who is a retrovirus expert. I wanted to say at Harvard, but it may have been like UCLA, something like that, or Stanford. I can't remember. But she was a veterinarian, and he starts listing all the different heads of retrovirology at different schools and organizations in the United States, and they're all veterinarians. And here we have AIDS that supposedly comes from a monkey is a retrovirus. And not only that, according to Robert Strucker, when he looks at it closely, it's made of cattle and sheep DNA. I need time to look into it further. I don't have a team with me, but I'm going to keep going with this because there's something to it. There's something to it. As well, I read the Kissinger quote yesterday from a speech to the WHO Council on Eugenics, February 25th, 2009. Once the herd accepts mandatory vaccinations, it's game over. This made the rounds big time during COVID. They will accept anything, forcible blood or organ donation for the greater good. We can genetically modify children and sterilize them for the greater good. Control sheep minds and you control the herd. Vaccine makers stand to make billions, and many of you in this room are investors. It's a big win-win. We thin out the herd, and the herd pays us for extermination services. So the NIH goes and argues that AIDS is transferred from monkey saliva. As Strecker says, which I thought was pretty, he says, yeah, they say that AIDS jumped over to humans because a monkey, they call it the green monkey, jumped up and bit a guy in the ass. Yet it doesn't transfer that way for humans. It has to be blood to blood. Isn't that strange? Isn't that weird? Not only that, but the fact that there's no monkey genetics in the virus. As well, the genetic makeup of the disease resemble diseases in cattle and sheep right there. Yeah. There was a paper in 1973. I don't know how to Mariyama and Domachowski. Cross-species transmission of mammalian RNA tumor viruses. Right there. They go into it. These papers were coming out in the late 60s, early 70s saying, hey, there's people messing around with nature in a way that maybe they shouldn't. My dad was never terribly religious, didn't tell me too many religious stories about anything, but he would always say, you just don't mess with nature. You just don't mess with nature. And pride is what will bring us down. So when you look at, let's say using viruses against humanity might be something that's top down. But what if that is the elite trying to, well, what are they trying to do? What are they trying to accomplish? Since most of the general public will not exercise restraint, there are two alternatives to reduce the economic inductance of a system. And what are they trying to restrain people from themselves in terms of greed and procreation? People are having too many children, which I mean, you want to talk about how fucking stupid these people are, how short sighted. And I don't even think that they're that stupid. I think that they just kind of hate people that they see as beneath them. And the reason that they see them beneath them, it's a psychological buffer for themselves. Because what you're dealing with are people that were born into their position. Not always. Some of these guys work their way up from the bottom, but not the way that most American millionaires do. It's like 98%, something incredible, of American millionaires come up from either poverty or the middle class. They're not born into it. America's really cool that way. It's really set up so that if you can learn how to do things the right way and you show that you can do it day in, day out, over and over again, and you get yourself in a rhythm, suddenly you move up. These types hate that. If you've watched me, I talked about the aristocratic South, where they needed, the aristocrats, they needed slavery because their entire economic system was built on it. Frederick Douglass, he made the point, hey, if we're going to abolish slavery, we have to upend the entire system. We have to flip it upside down. Let me see if I have the note right here. I have it somewhere, and I'll bring it up next time. But Douglass made the point. You want to get rid of slavery, you have to upend the system 1,000%, because everything you see here in the South is built on it. When you have something as evil as slavery, everything will come from that economic structure. And so if you want to get rid of slavery, you have to get rid of the entire system. You have to get rid of the entire structure. Something people don't talk about is that and this is true, there were black slaves that were treated better than some of the poor whites in the South. The aristocrats, the people that owned slaves, they didn't care what race their slaves were. It was just legal to own the African ones. And those are the ones that were brought over on boats by Jews. It's called the Jewish slave trade. They were brought to the South where they knew that that system was reliant on that commodity, on that chattel. And what did you see? What did you see in the South? You saw the state run amok. You had a system where the business interests were so reliant on something they knew was morally wrong that they had to dig deep into the government and they had to control it. And in doing as much, they had to control everyone tightly. And so you didn't have upward mobility in Georgia the way that you did in New York City. They looked down on these people because that was their self-preservation, was to do so. And when you do that, when you do that, when you're willing to change your entire belief system of right and wrong so that it keeps you comfortable and it keeps you in where you want to be in life, you're willing to do anything. And that's what you had in the South. Like I said, I talk about the need for a digital bill of rights. In the South, anybody that they thought might be an abolitionist, they would open their mail, which was a federal crime. They didn't give a shit. They needed to know. They needed to keep the system the way it was. And when people tried to come in and change things. They didn't even want people talking about abolition. They needed things to stay the way they were because they were comfortable in that moment. It's rational choice. Here we have these aristocrats. Who did I mention goes to Bilderberg? Royalty. Royalty. You know, talk about inbred. And yeah, there's a lot of really wealthy people, but they begin the paper on here, this one in 1979 that says you've been chosen because you've proven that you know, you let me read it. I don't want to. You have qualified for this project because of your ability to look at human society with cold objectivity. And even that is patting themselves on the back. They've got it figured out, and it's self-evident. You want to get to Immanuel Kant and the German philosophy that comes out of Johns Hopkins, which is where the progressives came from, that created this jacked up system that we have, that these guys celebrate, where they get to print money in order to keep power. You have qualified for this project because of your ability to look at human society with cold objectivity, and yet analyze and discuss your observations and conclusions with others of similar intellectual capacity without a loss of discretion or humility. Without a loss of humility. And this is the guy that then says, if the people really cared about their fellow man, they would control their appetites, like greed and procreation, so that they would not have to operate on a credit or welfare social system which steals from the worker to satisfy the bum. Hey, this guy sounds like a modern George W. Bush Republican. These are the humble ones? And you don't see that this thinking, this line of thinking is being applied to every aspect of our reality. Not just society, not just what's on screens, our entire being. Everything around us is built on this. There is a system in place, and it's the way it is. It will always be the way it is. Don't tell us otherwise. And the moment somebody comes along with some idea, and I don't care who came up with it, I don't care if it was CIA, Bitcoin shows up. Hey, look at this. Whoa, you can only make so much at a time forever. It's like gold. Here's an idea. The moment that people really truly latch on and they think this could be something, the system gets them in their sight and attaches itself, and suddenly banks are involved. There's no escape save flipping the entire system, which sounds scary and, God forbid, violent. Frederick Douglass, he saw the writing on the wall. Folks, you're not just going to come in here and end slavery. It ain't going to work like that. There's people with vested interests, and they have money and they have power. You think that the federal bureaucracy is any different? How many guns does the post office own? How many guns does the IRS own? You've been to an IRS office lately? You think the guys in the office are the ones that they're going to come send and collect what's due? There's no getting out of this, save flipping the economic system on its head. And how you do that peacefully, I don't know. Not there yet. Maybe I'll figure it out. I'll share it with you if I do. But as I said, he literally says, a little genocide might fix things. Since most of the general public will not exercise restraint, there are only two alternatives to reduce the economic inductance of the system. One, let the populace bludgeon each other to death in war, which will only result in a total destruction of the living earth. Two, take control of the world by the use of economic silent weapons in a form of quiet warfare and reduce the economic inductance of the world to a safe level by a process of benevolent slavery and genocide. What if nature found a way? What if they wanted AIDS? In the video, Robert Strecker is terrified that AIDS is going to become something that maybe it mutates and it will be something that we can spread through the air. He points out that yeah, we're talking a lot about it right now because it's relatively new, but that it's only going to get worse. He goes into some of the real interesting virology science of when you count this many. I think it's like 10%. So when you count this many people that have come into the doctor and we have record of them having this specific virus, when this is our number for 1979, 1983, whatever, it's that number is 10% of how many cases are actually out there. And then he points out that AIDS is scary because it looked to him like there could be a 14 to 20 year, I guess I don't know if it's incubation period, but could take 14 to 20 years for this thing to kick in. You might not know you have it for 14 to 20 years. And now you can't turn on streaming service or there's medication for absolutely everything imaginable under the sun, including AIDS, on TV. What did Kissinger say? Hey, we're investors. You guys are investors. Let's you know. Now Kissinger's talking about hurting people with hurting the herd with vaccines. It's kind of like letting the vampire in, you know. Yeah, you can decide. We're not even doing anything evil necessarily. We're letting evolution take its course. We'll put a virus out there, we'll see what it does, see what happens. Now they don't want to actually release a deadly, deadly virus because then they might get it. And if a bunch of people all go into hiding at once, then they'll know, hey, something's up. Where did these guys go? Why did they know something? No, they want society to keep going. They need the machine to keep running. They just want to be able to weaponize it. So it's no shock that when COVID is released, it's a lot like a really bad flu. And it's definitely not what would actually be weaponized in the end. So what if AIDS didn't take off the way that the guys that created it wanted it to? What if COVID was a correction for them? They're Thanos. These people are Thanos. Did you see Avengers? I still haven't seen all of them. I'm a DC guy. That's just who I am. But my kids have explained to me who Thanos, like his creed, what he was doing, and that he truly believed that every now and again you just got to thin the herd. It's disgusting. These, in order to think, and I understand I'm talking about a comic book, but I'm not. Thanos is based off of I don't know, Bilderberg. It's what it looks like anyway. I could be wrong. Maybe I don't know my stuff, but I do know how to read, and I know that this stuff came out in 1990, or the book was published in 92. The paper's from 1979, and it's talking about computers that to us look like dinosaurs that took up entire rooms. They've got they've got like these glorified calculators, and they're like, you know what? We could control the general population and help make decisions for them using this. And now we've got Mythos on a laptop. You boot it up, and like a beam of light shoots down from the heavens. Your computer starts smoking. And suddenly this hooded figure stands up on the screen. Robert Strucker goes into, could AIDS have been purposefully released? And he says, I know it's hard to believe, especially in the 90s. The video is so nice. These guys are so professional, and they've got the glasses that I had in the early 90s, those thick, metal rim. It was a more innocent time, I think. And now we've got conspiracy theorists everywhere. People are freaking out, and maybe for good reason. And Strucker says, I know it's hard to fathom. And in the early 90s, it probably was hard to fathom. I've heard nothing, this people used to mock this. I've heard people mock this. When you read it, you go, oh, shoot. I don't know where I have it in my notes, but Robert Strucker says, do you not remember the Tuskegee experiments where they give people syphilis? African Americans specifically. They watch them have deformed babies. They track them. They follow them. Everything that's going on with them. You don't remember syphilis? Come on. Or Tuskegee? No, we push these things out of our brain, especially if we tend to do it if they're about people that don't look like us. That's the truth. I mean, there's been so many people in the military. You sign up for the military, at least for a long time, you didn't know what you were signing up for in terms of testing, vaccine testing. They used to test all kinds of vaccines on soldiers. Do we really think that there aren't people out there that are just so willing and ready to play God? I just mentioned Planned Parenthood. Why does Planned Parenthood exist? Because they wanted to thin the herd, specifically those that they saw as lesser, intellectually inferior. A lot of times they see them as morally inferior because that's easier. You feel more right with God if you can be morally superior to other people. And so what are these guys? And again, it shows how banal the elite, so many of them actually are. Because what do they look down on? Greed. You can take control of the world by use of economic silent weapons in a form of quiet warfare and reduce the economic inductance of the world to a safe level by a process of benevolent slavery and genocide. Why do you do that? Well, if the people really cared about their fellow man, they would control their appetites. Greed and sex. Tisk tisk. How many of these types are Bill Gates level where they couldn't talk to a pretty woman if it was the last thing, if their life depended on it. I saw a meme that said that Bill Gates was inbred, and I can't get it out of my head because he's got the face. He's got the face. It's not downy, but it's definitely like, I don't know, something. His daughter's beautiful. I don't know if he got the government involved in that. Make sure that his daughter was real pretty, or I've heard it said that two pretties make an ugly and a pretty make a pretty, and that there are times where two uglies can make a pretty. And I think we're looking at the two uglies making a pretty because she's gorgeous. Got to hand it to her. Or maybe she's genetically modified and he created her in a lab. I don't know. Just throwing it out there. But you've heard the way he talks. And this is the guy that we let buy up how much farmland and start spraying our food. And our food already is genetically modified on a level where, in order to get if any of you have watched not Project Veritas, that's O'Keefe. Veritasium. Watch Veritasium. Look up Monsanto Veritasium on Google. Watch it. Learn about this cousin to Salmonella, the strain of bacteria that they inject the DNA. Sounds a lot like the Petri dish thing we just got done talking about. You just shoot the DNA into the DNA of wheat or corn or what have you. The DNA of this cousin to Salmonella that they knew was resistant to glyphosate, and then you have the Roundup Ready seeds, genetically modified with like just bacteria or bacteria is all. They just have you're just eating bacteria DNA, Frankenstein bacteria DNA. I don't know, the hubris, the absolute hubris, and then the you contrast that because you would think something with some group of people with so much hubris would also be intelligent enough to offer a real well thought out reason for why any of this stuff should even take place. But they're so obsessed, these Bill Gates types are so obsessed with doing the thing, whatever it might be, just because, I mean, they're the kid that has to destroy the ant farm. They're the kid that hurts animals. Why? Because they just kind of got to do it to feel it, maybe to feel something. Or like Bill Gates, maybe they're just inbred. I don't know if he's actually inbred. I can't say that. If the people really cared about their fellow man, they would control their appetites, greed, and procreation. If they actually cared, if the people cared about their fellow man, and here they're saying genocide might be the answer. It's just like Almond Day. It's just like Almond Day saying, let's completely upend our economic system. You've got millionaires, billionaires, you've got Sergey Brin in California fighting tooth and nail. I think, tens of millions of dollars to try to stop this billionaire tax just in California, because he knows what it's going to do to California. He knows what that is going to do to the entire United States if Silicon Valley gets upended. California relies on Silicon Valley to exist in its current form. And here, Amande wants to bring that system to the entire country in order to fight China. You think you think the CCP guys, they don't know what makes a country strong? You think that they haven't figured out that it's free market economics? This is a generation that got to see China become. And China did not become what it is because of just great decision making from centralized control. We're talking science here, folks. We're talking economics. There are laws. There are rules. There is a reality to it. You cannot do what China has done without free trade and people making the best decisions for themselves. They have allowed for it to a degree. What would they love of us? The actual CCP, the bad guys that really, you know, they would love for the United States to look and act and sound just like them. If they are our enemy. If not, if then why worry about it? If they're our enemy, if they really are our enemy and they want us to hurt, they will try to subvert our culture. Or maybe they don't want us to hurt. They just want us to have an economic system like them, and they want us to be just as easily controlled as their population is. And it feels like we're getting there anyway. Oh, but we don't have a social credit score like they do. Oh, bullshit. They might even have more freedoms than we do in some ways. Wouldn't that be something? How often is the CCP made out to be the bad guy? It's like Iran and Israel. Oh, we're going to war with Iran for Israel's sake. The moment Iran that regime is flipped, Israel can no longer come to the American taxpayer and say, "I need money because of these bad guys over here." You think Israel really? Now, I'm not saying Israel doesn't want us to go to war with them, with Iran. But trust me, they don't want regime change. Not the people in power in Israel that have been in power for the past 20, 30 years. There's video in 1990s of Netanyahu saying explicitly, Iran is months away from a nuclear weapon. You think they really want us to upend the Ayatollah and put in some sort of working republic, or maybe not put in anything and just let it be, let them do the work, make Israel actually go do the work and help them set up a stable government? I don't know, we're an entire world of 90% really good people, and all of us are having to put up with somewhere between 5 and 10% of the upper crust, the upper echelon running the show and working together more often than not at the expense of the common man. That's my viewpoint. I think Israel has a deep state. I think we have a deep state. I think China has a deep state. And I think for the most part, most of the world are actually just really good people that want to do the best they can and do the right thing. And we're humans. We follow trends. We like to socialize, but now we're led down this road of blue screens. Not only that, but we find these little cliques. We've created our own factions. I followed nothing but carnivore Twitter for a while, and I eventually, the in group, like I forget what it's called, but like the pressures that they put on each other, it was too much for me. But they do that in every group, everything, and so it's nice. Yeah, you can go find people that are just like you. That's cool. It's fun. But what about what Caroline Strucker said yesterday? That there's something to be said about going out and meeting people that are nothing like you, but you happen to be their neighbor. I think that's the one thing that these guys don't want you doing. I don't think they want us going out and meeting one another, especially if we're nothing alike. If like-minded people all meet on the internet, it can be monitored completely, and they're the most predictable. I mean, you're setting yourself up. You are picking your team, and then and they've already got the data on everybody else on that team, and they know your likes, they know your wants, they know where you're headed. And again, I'm reading something from 1979. How much has their thinking on this advanced? I don't know. But I know that right here, it's banal as hell. This idea that if the people really cared about their fellow man, they would control their appetites, greed, and procreation. They look down on them, and that's the way it is. That is perfectly fine. Again, we go back to Kant. I'm being repetitive, but I want this to stick with people. Where did this come from? It came from German philosophy, straight up. The idea that there is reality, and it is what it is, folks. And there might be some of you that say, "Well, this is Satan's domain." You'd be right. But these German philosophy folks, these progressives, they need this. They need the morality. Gets back to what I was saying. They need to be morally superior so that they can do whatever they want and their conscience allows it. They've got to get past that. How much of communism wanting to destroy God so that the state is all there is partly just the upper crust, the upper echelon having to convince themselves so that they can commit the atrocities that they do and that they have. Read about the Bolshevik Revolution. Read about Mao. And we've got kids walking around with Che Guevara shirts. Read about Che. Read about read about how disgustingly racist Che Guevara was. There's racist jokes. There's people that tease about being racist. We see that Austin Metcalf. Again, I'm jumping around. I don't care. Listen, Austin Metcalf, the prosecutor that was representing the Metcalf family, because Carmelo Anthony killed their son Austin. The prosecutor and the defense made a deal. They didn't tell the judge. They didn't tell the Metcalfs. But they made a deal. We are going to withhold evidence on both sides. So it's equal, right? Austin Metcalf made racist jokes, wrote the N-word, did something with Nazis or said Heil Hitler. I don't know what he did. Who gives a shit? Speech. Metcalf was guilty of just varying speech. Carmelo Anthony, what did they withhold that he did? Threatened to kill his girlfriend, said that he was going to stab somebody and then lick the blood off the blade of the knife. I mean, this guy's talking about literal violence, literally going out there and doing violent things. The other guy is throwing things out there because it gets a chuckle from his buddies. We have made speech that is considered to be racist so taboo that people are going to go, especially Americans, are going to go out of their way to say it to their friends, to their in-group, to show solidarity with the in-group, because if you make sure that you joke and tease about the out-group, then your in-group sense of self is strengthened, according to social identity theory. Tajfel and Turner, I want to say 1973. That was withheld, joking about these things, making allusions, making jokes about race, versus somebody that was stalking his girlfriend, that didn't make it to court, said that he was ready to stab someone and lick the blood off the blade. I mean, there's more to it. I'd have to look at it, and I think I'll talk about it in the coming days. What kind of a justice system do we have? And we have the media brush over it, where nobody's talking about this. Nobody's talking about that. This is the justice system that we're in. The Metcalf family didn't even know about these things. They didn't know the prosecution had some of this evidence that could have had an effect on the sentencing of Metcalf. Not Metcalf, of Anthony. So premeditation to murder is on equal footing as saying naughty racist words. Give me a break. What kind of a justice system do we have? And this justice system has been set up because it's across the board. These kinds of issues, we're seeing them across the board, across the United States, where races are protected. You have to ask yourself, why? Say what's in this is true. Say what's in this is true. And that there are people that are making specific decisions to steer society in specific directions. Do you really think DEI coming along? Do you really think that these prosecutors that are picked, these DEAs or DAs, excuse me, these DAs, do you think that's not set up? That the idea isn't, hey, we're going to cause some chaos within these people's free market system. And I'm telling you right now, I don't think that if there's a game going on, and there is, I think this is real. So since most of the general public will not exercise restraint, there are only two alternatives to reduce the economic inductance of the system. And again, they talk about money printing as being one of the primary weapons of the silent war. And I'm going to skip the first one, he says. I'm going to go back to this. I've read it again. Take control of the world by the use of economic silent weapons in the form of a quiet warfare and reduce the economic inductance of the world to a safe level by a process of benevolent slavery and genocide. Now, granted, if you're paying a specific amount of your tax dollars, you're a slave. And we know about the genocide. But what happens when the COVID vaccine, maybe it's not as deadly as they thought. I'm still worried that Strecker is correct and that COVID, the COVID vaccine, which is giving people VAIDS, vaccine induced AIDS, and they're ending up with turbo cancers, pneumonia, the same thing that people with AIDS in the 80s were getting in mass. What if that's just still not enough? What if somebody like Trump shows up and Trump isn't part of this club? What if they start thinking, "Oh shit, we gotta keep control of we've got to stay in power. What's the next thing we do? We've printed all the money we're going to print. We've kept inflation exactly where it has to be." I mean, they talk about messing with commodities to figure out these sweet spots. So they've got inflation exactly where it has to be so that people can still eat but are hurting inside. Let's keep them disaffected for a good while. The other option they give is to let the populace bludgeon each other to death in war, which will only result in a total destruction of the living earth. What are those billionaires buying right now? What are they having built, dug into the ground? At what point does plan B become plan A? Why did they release a movie called Civil War? I've talked about predictive programming a little bit on here. Why do they want people thinking about civil war? Why is that word all over the place all of a sudden? And so then you go and you look at this story that really did not make the rounds, which is interesting in and of itself. Someone tipped me off, thank you to the person who did, and said, "Hey, did you pay attention to the evidence that wasn't given in this Metcalf Anthony trial?" They put Mr. Metcalf through a humiliation ritual. I don't know if any of you remember. The lawyers, the media, the talking heads, they put him on his heels. Here he's trying to grieve the death, the brutal murder of his son by someone who had decided he was going to go do it, from what it looks like. What if that's the next phase? We saw right after COVID, we got our big, and it's so neatly packaged is part of what made me so curious with the what's his name, George Floyd. It was so neatly packaged, and then the riots that come from it were so perfectly done in just the right city that is so freaky leftist. up in a state uh, that Rob Schneider said Minnesotans are nice, but might be the dumbest people in human history. Something to that effect. I love Minnesota. It's a gorgeous place. Um, and where were the voices? Where were the voices on the other side that said, "Hey, let's do the opposite. Let's go out and march in unity, in racial unity. Let's go do it like Martin Luther King Jr. would." You know that those voices, had they shown up at the time, would have been treated as heroes by so many. They would have been appreciated. But we don't get any of that. We only get the guys who are calling for reform. Reform toward what? DEI had already kicked in all over the country. Oh, we need a, police need to be completely rethought how we do this. Maybe we'll just get rid of the police. So something that really didn't need to be a racial issue at all was turned into the racial issue of our time. Where are we heading? Because now, post George Floyd, a black person premeditating murder is likened to a white person writing the N word on an internet forum. That's not justice. Adam Smith put it plainly that you cannot have a free market system. You cannot have a capitalist economic system without true justice. Who really honestly does not want a free market capitalist system? These aristocrats. These people that are so freaking scared of upward mobility of the young um, middle class coming up out of nowhere with new ideas, new products, things that make them obsolete. I mean, they're so desperate, they're trying to live forever or upload their consciousness to a machine so that they can live forever. Because you know what? When you're born into this, life is good and you don't want to give it up. We've got to be real careful. As a society, we have got to be so careful in the coming years. And this stuff has to be reversed. The what happened in, was it Houston? What happened in Texas has to be reversed. And we need people to step up and be blatant and forceful about it. We've got to quit talking about hate speech, by the way, because we know that hate only goes a specific couple directions. And who set it up? It's the freaking Margaret Sanger types. These progressives that believe in Darwin above all else. These truly honest to goodness leftist, Democrat, liberal, free thinking racists. That's what we're dealing with. And we're in a tight spot too. We're in a really tight spot. Because I'm doing my best to make sense of this, to put it together. But even I keep repeating myself and going over the same info over and over again, because I think I'm trying to solidify it in my mind, because nobody's done that for me. Everything that we see, the narrative, the story that we've been given, it's repeated from a very young age onward. Who the bad guys are, who the bad guys are, who the bad guys are, who the bad guys are. Who are the bad guys? Well, they're white men. They're colonialists, and they look down on people that don't look like them. And every movie you see, everything, you've got brave, these people that are strong and brave, specifically women, stunning and brave. Doesn't matter how giant they are, if how homely they are, they're stunning, they're beautiful, because it's on it's on the inside that matters, not your actual output, not what you produce, not what you create. It's a fascinating bastardization of biblical morality, where yes, you are very special. You are God's child. God sees you as so special, loves every aspect of who you are, except for the aspects where you turn away from Him. This, they flip it on its head, and you're supposed to be proud of your gluttony, because that's just a part of who you are. You're supposed to be proud of the fact that you dress in your pajamas when you go shopping, because that's just who you are. It's what you are. Nobody can tell you otherwise, right? So just wear it with pride. And you rely on your own will, your own pride, to keep you going. And in order to do that, you have to remind yourself constantly. It's the opposite of what built Western civilization. True humility. But you keep doing that. You keep doing that to a specific group, namely women. And you tell them that they are deserving of A, B, C, D, and E, just because. You tell that to groups that have repeatedly been subjugated by the very progressives that are now purporting to champion them. I think it's a little sus. You think Margaret Sanger cared about women on any level? Do you think she cared about society, about black people on any level? They told themselves they did. When the World Health Organization went to Africa and gave people this smallpox vaccine, they were doing it to help them, right? Even though they curiously send researchers down to see how the AIDS that's suddenly spreading like wildfire in Africa is going in the exact same areas where they were administered the smallpox vaccines. They're doing it because they care. Bill Gates going to Africa, and suddenly all of these men and women are infertile. Doing it because he cares. Anthony Fauci, in the middle of a pandemic, telling blacks in Minneapolis to go out and just don't get too close to each other. But it's not on him to tell you how to individuate. It's not on him to tell you how to exercise your free speech rights. He's not a politician. He just happens to be the highest paid bureaucrat in human history. That's all. They look down on us. They look down on all of us, but specifically on people from specific whose genetics come from specific continents. That's the truth. And now that we're getting closer and closer, and you can feel it, that maybe the jig is going to be up sooner than later. Now they're putting out the idea of civil war. So when Tucker Carlson, at the end of his 10-point plan to save America, gets to the part that says you have to unify, that's what he's talking about. I think we have to band together, regardless of race, religion, any of it. We have to band together. And this time, if there's riots again, if something is brewing somewhere, who knows? Maybe the Metcalf, maybe the Carmelo Anthony thing, maybe that was supposed to be bigger. Maybe their silent weapon misfired. I've thought about that quite a bit. How often have they tried something and it didn't work out? It was just one of those blurbs in the news, and you think, well, that was weird. Glad it went away. Hantavirus, norovirus. It's just weird stuff out there. But I think that if we really got to where we were starting to ask the right people the right questions, if Congress were to start bringing them in, if the media were to actually do their fucking job and focus on it and make a big deal out of some of these specific stories, like the fact that our justice system is broken, that justice in America is tiered based on your race. We could have some change if they would do that, if they would do those things. But they don't. Things have gotten better. You watch Greg Gutfeld and you will hear libertarian ideas, but they're still talking about the exact news stories that I think these people want them talking about. I think it's still chosen from the very top. Megyn Kelly said that anytime that they would really actually try to dig into what was going on at Pfizer execs would call Fox News headquarters and shut it down. And they'd do it. They had to keep their jobs. What other stories are buried? What other evidence in trials that prosecutors have the chance to actually get some bad guys put away for a good long time is withheld because of race or sex or religion, or we just don't want the media talking about it because there could be upset people in the streets? Where's the gumption to say, you know what, we're going to take people to the streets that understand that unity is where it's at, that we are all Americans, the ones out of us that actually are. I'm very, very extremely appreciative of Caroline Strecker mentioning yesterday that that sorry, somebody just banged on the garage door. I'm in my garage. I'm in a garage. I'm not even in my garage. I'm in a garage. Somebody just banged on the door. They don't realize that I've got 10 to 15 people relying on hearing what I have to say every day. One time it was only 7. But I'm getting there. What was I saying? Something about Caroline. Forget what she... lost my place. And I've only got 2 more minutes. Gosh darn it. I still haven't gotten to the education part of the silent weapon. You realize that? I've got these news stories, and they're like a week old now, that spoke specifically to it. I mean, eventually it says, if you want to have your way, if you want to keep things chugging along the way that we would like them to, you absolutely must dumb the people down. and now we have students getting into college that are reading at not 10th grade, 10-year-old levels. Is there not something in you that you just kind of want to cry? Like, does that not hit you in the gut? I found like I don't remember what it was on, email forward. I don't think it was X. Before X, the one way that you could get some truth, and I didn't realize it at the time, but was email forwards. I actually wanted to write a paper on email forwards one time because I think that they are more, when you're getting an email forward, somebody took the time to say, "Hey, I want this exact person to read it," and then I think when you get it, you're like, "Hey, this person wanted me to read it." So in the late '90s, early 2000s, I think email forwards are kind of where it was at in terms of getting some of the stuff that I'm talking about right now out into the general public. But there was an email forward, and it showed homework from the 1920s, and or maybe it was the '40s, something like that. But I mean, it was so much. It's algebra that I can't do right now. But I've got my AI; it'll do it for me real quick. In fact, all I have to do is take a picture of the old homework and upload it, and Grok or Claude Butthole or whatever will tell me exactly what the answer is. And now, granted, it might be wrong. There's a good chance it's wrong because I've got the special needs version of AI. I am not dealing with the deity version that the elite have. The very elite that seem to be outsmarting us, outwitting us, and doing everything in their power to keep this aristocratic silliness alive, to keep their game going forever and always. Because that's what it is. That's what we're looking at, and we're going to have to look to our founding fathers for guidance. Caroline said yesterday that she thought, the Constitution is right there under the Bible in terms of maybe it's not holy, but gosh darn, it's close. I believe that she is exactly right. Same with Declaration of Independence. They're both right there. I think you got the Bible, you've got a few works like the Imitation of Christ, and you've got the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And I think God favors the United States, and I think he favors that Constitution. I think he loves it. I think he's really, I don't know, I don't want to speak for God, but I would imagine God's probably very proud of humanity for putting in the time, the work, the effort, the merit to create something like that in his name. And we're going to have to look to people like Frederick Douglass and what he said about, hey, you want to end this aristocratic slavery system? You got to flip it upside down, dude. What did Jesus do when he showed up at the temple and they were, what was it, selling alms? What did Jesus do when they had turned his holy place of worship into a marketplace? What did Jesus do to those that blurred the lines between benevolence and self-gratification? He flipped the tables. We've got to figure out how we can do that without violence. And I'll leave you there. See you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. And I won't be a couple minutes late this time. Guaranteed. Hey, is my camera, do I need to move it down a little bit? I don't know. I kind of like it. I like it right there. I'm good. We're good. We're good. Hey, thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Love you guys. See you tomorrow.